Yo gamers, it's time to level up your WoW Dragonflight game with the Algeth'ar Academy Mythic Plus guide. Get ready to soar higher than ever before with the reopening of the great Algeth'ar Academy. Led by Headteacher Doragosa, this academy is back in action and calling on all the peeps from across Azeroth to join in. Whether you're a seasoned dragon or a newbie, there's a seat for you in the classroom. So dust off your books and get ready to learn the latest tricks and tips to conquer the challenges of the Mythic Plus. With this guide, you'll be sure to ace it. The 5 dragon aspects and their buffs. The Quad in Algeth'ar Academy is an exciting place for any World of Warcraft gamer looking for adventure. The dragon aspects that inhabit this area offer a unique boon that can help you survive the challenges that await you in the dungeon. In this guide, we will take a closer look at each of the dragon aspects and their corresponding benefits. First up is the Bronze Dragonflight Recruiter. This dragon aspect offers a 5% haste buff that can increase your attack speed and reduce the cast time of your spells. This buff is ideal for those who prefer a fast-paced playstyle and want to deal damage quickly. Next is the Blue Dragonflight Recruiter, who offers a 640 mastery buff. This buff can increase your overall damage and healing output, making it ideal for those who prioritize high damage and healing numbers. The Red Dragonflight Recruiter offers a 5% versatility buff. This buff can increase your damage and healing output and reduce the damage taken from enemies. It's a versatile buff that can benefit any playstyle. The Green Dragonflight Recruiter offers a 10% increased healing taken buff. This buff can increase your survivability and make it easier for your healers to keep you alive during intense battles. It's ideal for tanks and players who prefer a defensive playstyle. Last but not least is the Black Dragonflight Recruiter, who offers a 5% crit buff. This buff can increase your critical strike chance, allowing you to deal more damage and heal for more. It's perfect for players who want to focus on dealing high critical strikes and those who prefer a high-risk, high-reward playstyle. In conclusion, choosing the right dragon aspect in Algeth'ar Academy can make a significant difference in your success in the dungeon. Make sure to choose the one that best fits your playstyle and helps you tackle the challenges ahead. Notable trash mobs to Veximus. As you journey towards Veximus, you'll encounter 2 notable trash mobs that you need to take note of: the Spellbound Scepter and Arcane Ravager. The Spellbound Scepter may look like a mere object, but it packs a punch with its 3 abilities. Firstly, it will spawn multiple little swirlies on the floor with Arcane Rain, dealing moderate damage to anyone who steps on them. Secondly, Monotonous Lecture will randomly put a player to sleep for 6 seconds, leaving them vulnerable to attacks. Lastly, Mana Void will circle around a random player and deal moderate damage to everyone caught in its path. As you'll face multiple Spellbound Scepters, be sure to keep an eye out for these abilities, as they can be lethal if left unchecked. On the other hand, the Arcane Ravager is a more active foe that you need to be cautious of. Vicious Ambush allows it to charge towards a player and deal moderate damage in a 5-yard radius. Avoid being too close to it to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Additionally, Rift Breath is a frontal breath that should be avoided at all costs. The Arcane Ravager may look intimidating, but with some strategic positioning you can take it down with ease. As you venture towards Veximus, don't underestimate these trash mobs. They may not be bosses, but they can still pose a significant challenge to unprepared players, so make sure to keep an eye out for their abilities and avoid their deadly attacks. The Veximus Boss Encounter. Veximus can be quite tricky if you don't know its abilities and how to counter them. But don't worry, we've got you covered. Let's dive right into the strategy. Firstly, let's talk about Veximus's abilities. The boss has 4 notable abilities that you need to be aware of. These include Arcane Expulsion, Mana Bomb, Arcane Orbs, and Arcane Fissure. Arcane Expulsion is a frontal cone that Veximus frequently uses in the direction of the tank. The tank's position determines the direction of the cone. It's crucial to avoid getting hit by this ability as it deals significant damage. Mana Bomb is another ability that affects 2 random players regularly. The affected players explode after 4 seconds, dealing moderate damage within a 4-yard radius. It's advised to move to an uncrowded place at the edge of the room to place the corrupted mana away from other players. Arcane Orbs is the main ability that you need to focus on in this fight. The boss gains 20 energy from orbs traveling towards it unless soaked by players. 5 arcane orbs spawn from the edge of the room and slowly travel towards the boss. Soaking these orbs deals light damage to players but applies a debuff over surge, which increases damage taken by 100%. Finally, Arcane Fissure is the most dangerous ability that Veximus possesses. The boss gains energy on itself, and upon reaching 100 energy, the boss explodes with Arcane Fissure. The explosion deals moderate damage to all players and pushes them away. Additionally, fissures of arcane energy will spawn below each player, following their position for 4 seconds. Coming in contact with these fissures deals heavy damage to all players struck within a 4-yard radius. Now, let's talk about the strategy to defeat Veximus. The main goal of this fight is to delay the amount of energy the boss gains, so you need to prioritize soaking the arcane orbs as soon as they spawn. The longer you delay the energy gain, the easier it becomes to deal with the other abilities. It's crucial to stay spread out and avoid getting hit by Mana Bomb or Arcane Expulsion. When you get hit by Mana Bomb, move away from other players to avoid causing them extra damage. When the boss reaches 100 energy, it's essential to move away from other players to avoid the fissures of arcane energy. Try to spread out and move away from the fissures to avoid taking extra damage. Repeat these abilities until the boss is defeated. Remember to soak the arcane orbs and move away from the corrupted mana to avoid taking extra damage. In conclusion, the Veximus boss fight in Algeth'ar Academy requires a lot of coordination and focus, but if you follow this guide, you'll be able to defeat the boss easily. Notable trash mobs to Croth. Let's now discuss the notable trash mobs leading up to the second boss in Algeth'ar Academy Croth. After defeating Veximus, the journey continues to the pitch, where you'll face several challenging mobs before encountering the Guardian Sentry. The first mobs you'll encounter after Veximus are a few more spellbound scepters and an arcane ravager. These mobs are relatively straightforward to defeat, so make sure to stay focused and coordinated with your team. As you progress, you'll need to use multiple air bridges to cross gaps, and you'll face a guard at the end of each bridge. After crossing the next air bridge, you'll come face to face with the Guardian Sentry. This mob is a tough nut to crack and will require some planning and strategy. The Guardian Sentry's main abilities are Expel Intruders and Deadly Winds. Expel Intruders is a 30-yard circle around the Guardian Sentry that deals heavy damage and knocks all players away who are struck. This ability can be particularly devastating if not avoided, so make sure to keep a safe distance from the Guardian Sentry. The Guardian Sentry will also spawn Deadly Winds, which are traveling tornadoes that stun players who are hit and deal heavy damage. These tornadoes can be particularly challenging to avoid, so make sure to stay alert and keep moving to avoid them. In conclusion, the Guardian Sentry is a tough mob to beat, but with the right strategy and teamwork, you can overcome it. Make sure to stay focused and coordinated with your team and be prepared to avoid the Guardian Sentry's powerful abilities. The Croth Boss Encounter. Today, let's dive into the boss Croth and her notable abilities and strategies. Croth is a unique boss that requires players to play ball with her, quite literally. In this post, we'll cover the 3 main abilities of Croth and the 3 goals that players must work towards to defeat her. Croth's 3 main abilities are Savage Peck, Deafening Screech, and Overpowering Gust. Savage Peck is a single target ability that deals heavy damage to the current tank and leaves a bleeding debuff for 10 seconds on the tank. The other 2 abilities, Deafening Screech and Overpowering Gust, are area of effect abilities that target all players. Deafening Screech silences all players during their spell cast, while Overpowering Gust is a frontal cone that knocks away all players struck. The key to defeating Croth is to work towards one of her 3 goals. The first goal is the goal of the Rushing Winds, which pushes players consistently away but spawns motes that can be picked up for a 45% haste. Players need to collect these motes while avoiding being pushed away by the goal. If players score 3 points in the goal of the Rushing Winds, it triggers Gale Force, which pushes all players in a certain direction until cancelled. The second goal is the goal of the Searing Blaze. If players score 3 points in the goal of the Searing Blaze, it triggers Firestorm, which stuns Croth and makes her take 75% increased damage for 12 seconds. The goal also spawns multiple void zones on the floor that deal heavy fire damage and stun players for 3 seconds if they're hit. The third goal is to play ball with Croth, collecting balls on the floor and bringing them into the designated goal. Using an extra button will throw the ball into the goal. Players must score 3 points in this goal to trigger squad goals, which is the achievement for scoring both goals at the same time. It's important to note that players must alternate between these goals, as it is impossible to score 2 goals at the same time. When Croth uses her Overpowering Gust ability, players must make sure to spread out at least 5 yards apart from each other to avoid splashing more damage onto each other. The circle around every player during Kroth's deafening screech ability deals moderate damage in a 4-yard radius and interrupts all spell casts. In conclusion, defeating Kroth requires players to work towards one of her 3 goals, while also avoiding her notable abilities. With a good strategy and teamwork, players can defeat Kroth and move on to the next challenge in the Algeth'ar Academy. Overgrown Ancient Notable Trash. Are you ready to face the Overgrown Ancient in Algeth'ar Academy? Well, before you can do that, you must first deal with the notable trash mobs that surround the boss. In this post, we'll discuss some of the most notable trash mobs that you should be aware of when facing the Overgrown Ancient. First up are the Vile Lashers. These creatures will annoy you with their detonation seeds, which will spawn green void zones under your feet that deal heavy damage if struck. However, the real danger comes from the surrounding hungry lashers that will activate when you pull a Vile Lasher. You'll need to take them out quickly to avoid being overwhelmed. The second trash mob to watch out for are the aggravated skitterflies. These flying insects patrol the room and will cast agitation, which increases their damage done by 25%. Over time, they'll ramp up in damage, dealing increasingly deadly damage with their darting sting ability. This ability charges the skitterflies to their target, dealing heavy damage in the process. When combined with the damage buff from agitation, these skitterflies can quickly become deadly. That's why we advise you to focus on them as fast as you can. Don't let them get too close and take them out as soon as possible. In conclusion, the Overgrown Ancient boss in Algeth'ar Academy may seem daunting, but with the right strategy and knowledge of the notable trash mobs, you can take it down. Overgrowth Ancient Boss Guide. The Overgrown Ancient boss in Algeth'ar Academy is one tough cookie, with a range of abilities that can wipe out even the most experienced of players. But with the right strategy and tactics, you can take it down and move on to the final boss of the Academy. Here are some of the Overgrown Ancient's most notable abilities and some tips on how to counter them. Germinate. Germinate is a powerful ability that creates void zones beneath all players, spawning inactive hungry lashers. This is the Overgrown Ancient's primary attack and can quickly overwhelm players. During Germinate, the boss will follow players, creating a void zone every second for 4 seconds. To counter Germinate, players should stack with the tank and move as a group around the boss. This allows players to cleave the hungry lashers quickly and prevent them from becoming too many. It's also essential to watch out for the void zones and avoid them at all costs. Branch Out is another ability that spawns an ancient branch in a larger void zone. The add casts Healing Touch on the boss and Splinter Bark on all party members. The Splinter Bark debuff deals moderate damage over time and stacks up. It's crucial to stand in the green circle to remove this debuff and interrupt the cast as quickly as possible. Barkbreaker, the boss will frequently attack the tank with Barkbreaker, dealing heavy damage and applying a debuff that increases the tank's physical damage taken by 100% for 6 seconds. It's essential to use cooldowns during this time, especially if the tank has to tank all the hungry lashers. Burst forth at 100 energy, the boss will explode for heavy damage to all party members and activate all remaining hungry lashers. We suggest that every second Germinate is triggered before burst forth. This means that every second wave of hungry lashers becomes active pretty soon. Conclusion. The Overgrown Ancient boss is a tough opponent, but with the right strategy and tactics, you can defeat it. Remember to stack with the tank during Germinate, interrupt Branch Out, and use cooldowns during Barkbreaker. Also ensure to watch out for the void zones and avoid them. With these tips, you can take down the Overgrown Ancient and move on to the final boss of Algeth'ar Academy. Echo of Doragosa Notable Trash Mobs. As you make your way through the Academy, you'll encounter 3 different types of enemies that can cause some serious trouble if you're not prepared. The first type of enemy is the Algeth'ar Echo Knight. They will cast Astral Whirlwind, which can deal moderate damage to players close to them. If you're a melee character, make sure you stay away from them as much as possible, or you'll be sorry. The second enemy you'll come across is the Spectral Invoker. They will cast arcane missiles on players, which can be interrupted. Interrupting this spell is crucial, as it can cause a lot of damage if left unchecked. Finally, we have the Algeth'ar Security. These are the most important mobs you'll encounter in the Academy, as they will use Disrupting Pulse, which deals heavy damage to all players and interrupts their spell cast. The good news is that this can be avoided by line of sight. We found that tanking the Algeth'ar Security close to a corner will allow players to quickly line of sight before the cast is finished. After fighting your way through 5 more trash packs, you'll finally face the last boss of Algeth'ar Academy, Echo of Doragosa. This is where all of your hard work and preparation will pay off. So make sure you've got your gear and spells in order, and good luck, Echo of Doragosa Boss Guide. Are you ready to face the Echo of Doragosa in the Algeth'ar Academy? This dragon boss is not one to be taken lightly, as it has several notable abilities that can easily wipe out an unprepared team. But fear not, as we have gathered some tips and tricks to help you conquer this boss with ease. The main mechanic of this boss fight is dealing with overwhelming power. This ability is triggered every time a player is hit by any ability, granting a 5% damage buff. But be careful not to get hit too much, as at 3 stacks, the Arcane Rift will spawn below the player, dealing light damage and shooting out projectiles that apply another stack of overwhelming power. So make sure to keep an eye on your stacks and move away from the Arcane Rift as soon as possible. Another ability to watch out for is the Power Vacuum, which pulls all players into the center of the boss and deals heavy damage after a 3-second cast. Make sure to move away from the center to avoid taking too much damage. This ability also applies overwhelming power when hit, so try to avoid it as much as possible. The boss also has an Astral Breath, which deals heavy damage similar to the Power Vacuum and applies overwhelming power to players hit. However, the good news is that the boss does not have a tail sweep. Lastly, the Energy Bomb is an ability that targets a random player and deals heavy damage to all players in an 8 yards radius around the targeted player. Make sure to spread out and avoid getting hit by this ability. In conclusion, make sure to keep an eye on your overwhelming power stacks, avoid the Arcane Rift and Power Vacuum, and spread out during the Energy Bomb. With these tips and tricks, you should be able to take down the Echo of Doragosa and move on to the next challenge.